Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. So nice to be in the same room again as all of you. Baruch Hashem. The rest of this week will be normal through Shabbos. Sunday morning, thanks, Tex. Sunday morning we'll be having Daf Yomi after what Shacharis is to what do we have on Sundays? 7:45. So let's do it after the 7:45 Shacharis, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are all going to be recordings, and then Shabbos should be normal. All right, then we're back into the school year, or just about close enough. So we're right now really in the midst of a sugya. We're 3 lines into the wide lines on Lamed Tes and Lamed Beis. We'll be learning Daf Mem tonight, going to the very last word on Daf Mem. And we're right now in the middle of a sugya. We're just going to go up a few more lines, go 2 lines before the wide lines. The Gemara says, in regards to a case of ones, ela ones, bishlama ihi, we understand that she, as the potential wife, can reject the husband because ksiv, it says velo sihya, and it needs to be midaita. So she's allowed to reject the me'anes. If a man violates a woman, he really should marry her, but she can turn him down. Ella, how do we know, aviha minalan, how do we know that a father is allowed to reject the husband for his daughter? That's a machlokas Abai v'Rava. Amar Abai shelo yehe chote niskar. We don't want him to do an avera and then be the one who is a niskar. That the father is not allowed to divorce, to tell them not to get married. He's still allowed to marry her after violating her. And Rava disagrees. Rava says there's a kal v'chomer. Rava said, first long line, umam efate shelo avar ela al das aviha bilvad. The mefate, so she was complicit. So in regards to the father, the person who was with his daughter violated the father's desires. Then there, bein hi uvein avia yicholam la'akev. In regards to the mefate, so both the daughter and father are able to reject the husband. So ones sha'avar al das avia ve'al das atzma lo kol sheken. All the more so there should be latitude. So this, says the Gemara, is the machlokas Abai v'Rava. Now we're starting where we are right now, 3 lines down. Rava lo amar ke'Abai. Why didn't Rava want to hold of the line of chote niskar? So he says there was no chote niskar. Came to come mishalim knas lav chote niskar. It's not really chote niskar because he still has to pay a knas. If he's still paying a knas, even though he violated her, even though the father. Okay, so that's not called chote niskar. And Abai lo amar ke Rava. Why didn't Abai want to say like Rava? Because says the Gemara, mefate de ihu matzi me'akev, in regards to a mefate where he is allowed to turn down the marriage of yanami matzi me'akev, then the father also is allowed to. But ones de ihu lo matzi me'akev, but where the rapist himself, the violator, he's not allowed to turn down the marriage of vihanami lo matzi me'akev. Abaye says it seems to be dependent on the similar capacity and the roles of the violator and the father, that they both, whatever the violator can do, the father can do. So that's why they have an argument. And the Gemara brings a new brayso. So Tanya idach, afal pisha amru ones nosein miyad. Even though we said that if a man violates a woman, he has to pay the knas right away. Kshayotzihu, when he leaves the marriage, ein la alav klum. She has no tainas on him. She doesn't get a ksuba because she already collected the knas. Says the Gemara, what do you mean, kishayotzi? Mi matzi mapikla. We just were talking about this, that a person who violates a woman is not allowed to divorce her. He's not allowed to turn her away. He's obligated to marry her. So how can that be? So says the Gemara, you're right, Ema. We need to change the language of the brayso we just learned. Kshetetse he, when she leaves the marriage, then ein la alav klum, then she doesn't collect a ksuba. The brayso continues 5 lines from the bottom. Meis, if the man dies, then yotza kesef kinasa biksubasa. You get only one payment. You're going to get the knas and not the ksuba, or the ksuba not the knas. That's the sheet of the Tanakama in regards to the case of mace. However, if Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer yesh la ksuba mana, she still does get 100. What are the Rabbanan, the Tanakama, and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda arguing about? Rabbanan savre taima mai takinu Rabbanan ksuba. What's the reason why we have a ksuba in the first place? So the Gemara reminds us of the famed principle, so that it's not simple for a husband to get rid of his wife. He has to go through a process of a get, and he has to make sure that he pays her an equivalent of Masayim Zuz. But this guy, lo matzi mapikla, he's not allowed to divorce her anyways. So therefore, he says that ein la alav klum. However, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda savar, it's true that he's not allowed to divorce her. However, he could make her miserable enough that she would want to divorce him. Hanami mitzaer la ada amrahi lo ba'inalach. because it's kind of like a reality check, because he knows that he really could drive her crazy enough to say, like, I'm done with this. So therefore, we still have a concern about the ease of divorce, and therefore we're matzrich him to pay me'azuz. We had said in our Mishnah, ones shosa be'atzitzo, that a person who's ma'anes a woman, he drinks from his own cup. Basically, he painted his future. If he's going to be violating this woman, then the Torah requires him to marry her. Again, she can turn him down. Machlokas about the father as to why the father can. But here, either way, a man himself, the violator himself, should be marrying this woman. So says the Gemara, Amar le Rava miprazkia le Ravashi michti. When I look into this, I have the following question. Migmar gamre mehadade. We know that we learn from the world of ones to the world of mefata, and from mefata back to ones in regards to the 50 and the shkalim. Only one pasuk speaks about 50 and the other pasuk speaks about shkalim, but we combine them to say that. So says the Gemara, if we really do make a comparison between ones and mefata, and we learn 50 from one and shkalim from the other, then as we turn to the top of Mem and Aleph, which really is today's daf, then lahamil sanami ligmaru mehadade. Maybe we should say that just like in regards to a person who's an ones, that he's shose be'atzitzo, he has to drink from the cup that he's created. In other words, that an ones, a me'anes, has to marry the woman that he violated. Maybe we should say the same thing by a mefate. So says the Gemara, Amar Kra, that's not true. Mahor yimharena lo leisha lo midaito. We have a drasha, and when it says yimharena lo, the word lo is that it has to be midaito and not midaito. So in other words, it has to be that he wants to actually marry her, and it can't be forced. Keitzad shose be'atzitzo. We said that how is it that a person has to marry this woman, that the ma'anes has to marry this woman, that even if she's mechuar, even if she's a mukashchin, if a man chooses to violate a woman, he's taking the responsibility to be with her. It's an unbelievable thing. I think in halachic terms, I can see the discomfort of the ma'anes and the me'aneses needing to be married. However, the Torah is forcing a degree of responsibility here. You probably got that woman pregnant. You need to be a part of that family. I don't know if that's the Gemara Svara. It's like giving time with the crop, but there's something about achrayas that seems to be woven in here. Now, our Mishnah had said that yes, a person should be shosa me'atzitzo. However, if you're related to the woman, right? So let's say a man violates a sister, so then you're not allowed to marry her. But why not? What happened to the principle of aseh dochelos aseh? We have a mitzvah say that a ma'anes has to marry the woman that he violates. Okay, but why can't he marry a woman that he violates, even if that woman is asura to him? What happened to the principle of aseh dochelos aseh? This is the Gemara's question, 3 lines down. Amar of Kahana, Amrisa l'shmaisa kame de Rav Zvid minaharda. I brought this up in front of my Rebbe Rav Zvid, and I said, Nesi aseh b'nidchelos aseh. Why don't we have the aseh of a me'anes needing to marry the me'aneses? Why doesn't that override the isser of whatever isser there is between the violator and the woman he violated? So says the Gemara, Amar li Rav Zvid responded as follows, and this is really a qualification in the sugya of aseh dochelos aseh. When do we have a trump card of an aseh overriding an aseh? Heicha amrina nesi aseh v'nidchelos aseh. That's kegon mila bitzaras, which is the classical example of an aseh being dochelos aseh. Delo efshar lekiyuma leaseh. There is no possible way to fulfill this mitzvah of bris milah without moving skin that possesses the tzaras. However, aval hacha I amra de lo be'ena. If this woman turns down the ma'anes and says, I don't want to marry you, then there is no mitzvah aseh at all. So Rav Zvid is teaching us a very important yesod in regards to aseh dochelos aseh. We only employ aseh dochelos aseh when there absolutely is no other option. But here, because we know that the woman who was violated can always say, I don't want to marry you, when she's mocheles, the aseh of the me'anes marrying her is dissolved. And then we do not employ aseh dochelos aseh. Fascinating. That means that we never employed in this frame at all. And we have to then look back at all the other cases. Of course, mila bitzaras is always going to be the good one, because what are you supposed to do? The foreskin has to be removed. Fine. So that was the Gemara's question and answer in regards to aseh dochelos aseh. The new Mishnah quarter of the way down, Mem Amud Aleph reads, Yesoma, if there's a woman who has no parents, shenis arsa v'shenis garsha, she got engaged and then she got divorced, seemingly didn't get married. Rebbe Lazar Omer ha'ones chayev. If someone is me'anes her, then chayev, then there's going to be a knas. V'mefate pater. And if one is mefate, one seduces her, so then the halacha is that they're going to be pater. Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rebbe Lazar b'shitas Rabbi Akiva Rabo Amra. To Amar yesh la knas v'knas la asma. Rabbi Elazar seems to be of the opinion of his Rabbi Akiva. Of course, after the time that the 24,000 Talmidim were all killed, there were a handful of Talmidim that rekindled the flame of Torah. And this Rashi here details, of course, a little bit of the history here. Where is that Rashi? I don't remember where I saw it. It's a little bit lower down. If you look down in Rashi, Dibra Maskel Tuvina de Chakimi. So Rashi says, 2 lines into that Rashi, Rebbe Lazar ben Shamua Talmido shel Rabbi Akiva haya. We learned there on Daf Samech Beis. The world was desolate from Torah after the death of the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. And here's the names: Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua. So an important time in history, of course, by the time of the second Churban. Fine. Let's go back to the beginning of the Gemara, Mem Amud Aleph. The Gemara says that really all of this is in the name of Rabbi Akiva, who holds the Amar Yesh La Knas. She does have a Knas, this Yisoma, and the Knas Atma, and she collects the Knas herself. Says the Gemara Mimai, when Rabba Bar Bar Chana, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, teaches us this idea that really Rabbi Lazar is holding like Rabbi Akiva, where does he get this from? From our Mishnah. So says the Gemara, look, I understand when it comes to a regular girl who has parents, and we're not sure where the knas should go, we may default to the father because of the psukim. But a Yisoma has no parents. So when Rabbi Akiva says that the money goes to the Yisoma pshita, but there's only one possible recipient. She doesn't have a father. She's a Yisoma. So that's the Gemara's question halfway down. Yisoma pshita. Says the Gemara, what do we learn from this case that is blaringly obvious? That obviously a Yisoma is going to be the one to get the knas. There is no father. Ella, says the Gemara, hakamash malan dinara. Just a regular girl, shenis arsa v'niskarsha ki yisoma. That once a girl gets engaged and then gets divorced, then she's halachically equivalent to a yisoma as it relates to the knas. Ma yisoma la'atzma, just like a yisoma who doesn't have a father, she'll be the recipient of the knas if she's violated. So too says the Gemara, af nara shenis arsa v'niskarsha la'atzma. Very, very powerful equivalence. And really, what the Gemara is doing is it's drawing a line in the sand. When do we say that a daughter is no longer a part of her father's house? And the answer is nisarsa v'niskarsha. Once she gets engaged and gets divorced, done. And really niskarsha more than anything. It's the gerushin that is a total cut, because if she's nisares and her husband died, then she can still go back to her father's house and eat truma, as we've seen earlier in this Masechta or in previous Masechtas. Fine. Says the Gemara halfway down, Amar Reb Zera, Amar Rabba Bar Shila, Amar Rav Hamnuna Saba, Amar Rav Ada Bar Ava, Amar Rav, so many Rabbanim, Halacha Rebbe Lazar, we pass in that way. Kari Rav Alei de Rebbe Lazar, Tuvina de Chakimayim. He is one of the good ones of the wise ones. Rashi here, the same Rashi we looked at before. I skipped over this part before because it wasn't the point of the Rashi at the time. Rashi says, Tuvina de Chakimi, Me'ushar shebechachamim. He is the Me'ushar of them. The happiest, the wealthiest of them. It's a little bit of a hard word to explain in this context, but it's a compliment to say the least. If Rabbi Akiva would say that about any one of us, I think we'd be pretty satisfied with where we're holding in our learning. But unfortunately, I don't think he would. The next Mishnah starts 2/3 of the way down. Ezehu boshes. We spoke about the fact that if a woman is violated, that there's boshes. How do we define boshes? The Gemara responds, Akol lefi hamevayesh v'hamisbayesh. It depends who's embarrassing you, and it also depends on you who is embarrassed. Very cryptic Rashi here. Take a look at Rashi. This is a psychological Rashi. Rashi dibra maskel. Hakol lefi hamevayesh. Adam benoni hamevayesh. Bushaso kashe mi adam zolel u'mi adam chashuv. If the average person embarrasses you, his busha toward you is worse than a lowly person and worse than a chashuv person. If the average consumer thinks lowly of you, that will hurt more than if the greats think lowly of you. I don't know what this means. I'm not sure. I didn't have time to look. I looked briefly on the page. I didn't see anything here. If anybody knows, please let me know.
It sounds like if somebody's higher station than you expect them to go down, and if somebody's lower than you, what do you expect from them? They're like a low guy.
So you're saying it's your friends that hurt the most. I don't know. I hear the svara. I hear what you're saying hierarchically. I hear what you're saying, but socially, I don't hear it, because if my Rebbe is going to give me an insult, it's going to be the worst. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're looking at it the right way and I'm looking at it the wrong way. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, no, it's a good throw. I hear you loud and clear, and my brain couldn't even go there because I tried that in my head. But the second I was thinking about it, like if my Rebbe, if my father gave me a real critique, it would be much harder than. I don't know. I just don't know. That maybe I'm just me. I don't know. You had a thought, Michael?
That maybe that your Rebbe and your parents love you through the review.
Yeah.
The guy
Yeah.
doesn't. So that no.
Oh, you can accept the rebuke from a parent or a Rebbe, let's say. That's a beautiful svara, because it hurts less because you know they have your best intentions in mind. The people who are quote unquote zolel, the people who are beneath you, you don't care about. But the people who are your peers, you're like, not right. I hear you. Could be.
It's like you're trying to impress your friends with this new person in your life or something like that.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, one of you is probably right. I don't know. I have to look into it. I have Likutei Rashi. Is it the same thing? Well, it's the Dibra Maschel. Is a Kol Piyam Avayish. Adam Kal Shebiesh Bushasa Meruba. No, it's probably Adam Kal relative to. It's probably only 2 categories in this Rashi, not 3. Our Rashi has 3 categories. Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure. The Rashi threw me a little bit. Let's go back to the Mishnah. Pigam. How do we measure pigam? A person is now lower in value. Roanosa. We look at this woman. Ki'ilu hi shifcha nimkeres b'shuk. We look at this woman as though had she been a shifcha who was being sold in the shuk, kama ha'isa yafe v'kama hi yafe. How much would she have been as a basula, and how much is she now as a beula? And how do we measure knas? That's shavu b'chol adam. That's a pasuk in Chumash. That's the easy stuff. The Mishnah concludes with a broad statement: anything that the Torah has as a fixed number, shavu b'chol adam, is the same for everybody. Says the Gemara, "Ve'ema chamishim slaim amar rachmana mikol mili." Oh, are you nickeling and diming? Is 50 the total, and pigam and boshes are included, or is 50 the knas and boshes and pigam are excluded? In learning terms, we'd say, is this milagav or milavar? Is this an internal? Is 50 the total number, or is 50 the base of the knas? And then we add on top of that, let's say that each of them were 10 slime apiece. Now we're up to 70. Okay, so how do we do the math? Says the Gemara, Amar Reb Zera, Yomru balbas melachim chamishim, balbas hedyotos chamishim. Do you think the busha of a princess who gets violated is the same of a peasant who gets violated? Absolutely not. So it says the Gemara, not a good argument. Amar le Abaye, ihachi gabe eved nami. Look at Rashi. What's the case of an eved? Eved shenagcho shor, an eved who was killed, gored by an animal. Shenas na Torah kitzva lamet shkalim. There, the Torah gives us a fixed amount. Boshes is not a fixed amount. But here, in regards to the eved, it's the fixed amount. Remember the last line of our Mishnah, that anytime the Torah gives a kitzva, then shaveh b'chol adam. So the cost of the eved being gored doesn't change. So ihachi gabe eved nami, who was gored, yomru eved nokev margolios. You have an eved who's very, very talented. He knows how to drill a perfect hole in the center of a margolios, in the center of a stone, of a gem, of a pearl, and he gets shloshim. And eved, turning to the top of the next page, osem ma'aseh machat, who does a simple tailoring stitch, he also gets shloshim. Come on, like that, you see that these people are very different, but the Torah equates them the same way. So the Gemara responds to that. Good point. Elamar Reb Zera, ilu boa leha shnayim. If 2 people were to violate this woman, echad kedarka, vechad shelo kedarka, one in a normal way and one in a shelo kedarka, yomru bal shlema chamishim, bal peguma chamishim, would the pegam be the same? The pegam is not the same. The pegam is different. One person was the person who brought her from a basula to a beula. The next person is not. So says the Gemara, Malei Abaye, Hachi Gabi Eved Nami, the same argument back again. Yomru Eved Bari Shloshim, Eved Muka Shchin Shloshim. They all have the same costs. So they're not relative costs, they're fixed costs. Says the Gemara, what you guys are comparing apples and oranges. How are you comparing a fixed cost of a katziv to boshes? Boshes is not a fixed cost. So the Gemara says, El Amar Abaye Amar Kra, Tachas Asher Ino. That's what the pasuk reads. The pasuk reads that if a person violates a woman, so his punishment is Tachas Asher Ino Lo Yuchal Shalcha Kol Yamav. He has to marry her. So what does the Gemara say? It's about the Ina. Hare Hani Tachas Asher Ina. The knas, the payment is going to be for the ina itself. Michlal, that separately the ika boshes supigam has separate costs. So he wants to say that the costs are milavar, that they're external costs. 50 is the base, and then we add boshes and pigam. Rava Amar Kra, the pasuk reads, "V'nasan ha'isha shochev ima lavi anaracha mishim kesef." And if you are medayik in the pasuk, what's the chamishim kesef for? That he was shochev with her, that he laid with her. Hana ashchiva nun. The hana of the tashmish amita for which he violated her, that's the nun, that's the 50 slim, that's the 50 units of dollars, whatever the money is. Michlal the ika boshes subgam, that are separate costs. So it seems from the Gemara very clearly that the costs of boshes and pigam are external to the knas cost of 50.
Is that only if she's basula? Like it was two
Well, the
different people,
boshes,
two different people have to
the
pay
boshes
for
and the pigam would be because she's a basula to a baula. Yes,
that.
that's
But
true.
The knas of the 50.
The
is that
kna-
also?
The knas of the 50 is based on that's what the pasuk says, that she's a me'orasa. The pasuk reads, where did I just see this? Yeah. Chimsa ish nara basula asher lo orasa usfasa v'shochav imav nimtza. So the 50 is only in that case. That's what he said also at Shini Skarshin. Okay, yeah, that's what the Gemara says. Anyways, that's how Abai Barava answered it. And then the Gemara says, Ve'ema, maybe we should say Lidida. Maybe we should say that she gets the money. Says the Gemara, she should get the boshes and the pigam. And maybe the knas can go to the father, but maybe she should get the boshes and the pigam because they have to do with her. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra, that's the Aleph Kuf, an uncommon Rosh Tevos in Shas. We don't normally see this. The Aleph Kufs are not normally written out this way for Amar Kra. Amar Kra binu ureha beisavia kol shvach neureha leavia. Any prop proceeds that she makes goes to the father when she's a nara. Ve'elohada Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Wait a minute, we already have a mari makom for this. Minayin shemaise habas leavia. How do we know that any proceeds that a daughter earns they go to the father? Because the pasuk reads shene'emar b'chim kor ish espito le'ama ma ama maise yadeha le'rabba. Just like a maidservant, all of her handiwork, all of her proceeds go to her master. Afbas maise yadeha le'avia. So therefore, lamali, why do I need two psukim? I have the pasuk of binu rea besaviha, and I have the pasuk of v'chim korish espito le'ama. So maybe we should have said tepuk lei. We should have learned the din mi binu rea besaviha. Why do we need two psukim teaching the same thing? Both of them are teaching me that the shifcha / the daughter, that their proceeds go to either the Rav and or the father respectively. Ella says the Gemara, Hahi, the initial pasuk that we learned about binu ureha besaviha, where we tried to show that that's where we learn from that the money goes to the father. Really, Hahi be'afaras nedarim hu dichsiv. That pasuk is talking about hafaras nedarim, that a father is allowed to be mefer neder, to undo one of the verbal commitments that his daughter made. Says the Gemara, great. Why can't we learn from there? Just like a father is able to do hafaras nedarim, all the more so he's able to take her proceeds. Says the Gemara, you've reached the limit of extrapolating from one thing to another. Mamona me'isura lo yalfinan. This is a very, very important Shas concept. It's oil and water. You are not able to extract a halacha about mammon from isurim. So there's mammon and there's isur v'heter, there's chachosh and mishpat, right? Isser v'heter. If I could make a diuk from a case in Yoredeya about kashrus and a case in Eben Ezer about tashmish amita, but mamona me'isura lo yalfinan, even though it's true, your logic may be your own logic as a human logic. Yeah, if a father can be mefer neder, she says, I make a neder. He says, no, your neder doesn't count. Of course he gets her proceeds. Obviously, if he has that much of a reach over her life, of course he should get her proceeds. At least it's implied that way. Says the Torah, no, you're not allowed to make such an extrapolation. Mamona me'isura lo yalfina. Says the Gemara, fine, I hear you. All right, I can't learn from Mama. Then says the Gemara, what about the knas itself? can I learn from the knas itself that therefore the boshes and the pigam, that all of the monies go to the father? Because the Torah says that the knas goes to the father. Says the Gemara, another dropped gavel? No. Mamona miknasa lo yalfina. Now, mammon and knas are the same genre. They're both about monies. However, and this is fantastically amazing, the deciphering here, the types of monies that are being collected in this violation are not the same kinds of monies. The knas is its own kind of money, and mammon is different. The knas is the Torah's slap on the wrist for what this man did, and it's a big punishment. It's not 50 shekel of today's. It's much more than that in today's dollars. So that's different than the boshes and the pigam. Boshes and pigam, that's not a knas. That's you owe me money because you hurt me, and that's different than knas. So these distinctions are huge when we're talking. When we have to remember these as we go through Shas, because when we're trying to ask our own questions, oh, why did I learn from? Because mamona miknasa lo amrinan or lo yalfinan, and mamona meisura lo yalfinan. So these are just a very important klalim. Ella says the Gemara as we get to the next two dots, 2/3 or 1/3 of the way down, a little bit more. Ella mistabra de avia have, that really the money goes to the father. The ibai, after all, masar la lemenuval umukashchin. Why is it that the monies that the father gets, how do we know that it's his, even the boshes and even the pagam? Because the father could literally marry off his daughter to anyone he wants. The man could be a menuval, the man could be a mukashchin, and all he can see, he has an ayin tova. He sees boils all over the person, he sees his neshama. What a gevaldik tzaddik. I'm going to have my daughter marry this guy. So as a child, the daughter has no say in the matter. So therefore, it's obvious that at that point, that as a nara, that all of the monies would then go to the father. Pigam.
Sorry, does she have to say because she's young? Or
Yes.
She has to say because she's been violent.
Because she's young. No, the point over here is not about the violation. It's that we're extracting from another halacha, which is that a father is able to marry off his daughter when she's a young child, not as an adult. As an adult, she has to approve. All right, how do we measure pigam? We had said in our Mishnah, Roan osakilu hi shivcha nimkeres. Heichi shaimin Allah. How do we establish this? How do we measure? Amar Avuha de Shmuel omdin kama adam rotza litain bein shivcha besula l'shivcha beula l'shamsho. So it says, well, there's a marketplace for this because this woman on the block, she costs X, she's a besula. This woman on the block, she costs Y, or X minus 1, X minus 10, because she's a beula. So says the Gemara, who cares? The woman cleaning her house, there's enough can mean if she's a besula or a beula. If she's doing laundry and washing dishes and cleaning, nobody cares. Doesn't matter. It doesn't change the efficacy of what she's doing. Shivcha beula l'shamshom, my nafka lemina. Who cares? It's a difference. Says the Gemara. Obviously, there is a difference. Ella says the Gemara halfway down, getting to the next Mishnah. Bein shivcha beula l'shivcha she'ena beula l'hasia la'avdo. Says, no, I'm buying this shivcha so that I can give this shivcha to my eved, and they're going to have babies, and I get the babies, and they're all also my avadim and shvachos. Says the Gemara, but still, who cares? Ule avdo, my nafka leimina. If she can conceive, she can conceive. If she can't, she can't. If the reason why you're buying this shivcha is because you want to have grand babies that belong to you as avadim and shvach, who cares if she's a basula or beula to the eved? What's the difference? You care about him, the eved? So says the Gemara, in this case, yes. But eved sheyesh lo rabo koras ruach imenu. It's an eved that you feel very close to, and it's considered a darga. It's considered a bit of a maila to buy a shivcha who's a basula versus a beula, because you care a lot about your eved and you want to make sure that this is a perk that she's a basula. So that's how we do our shaimin on. That's how we measure a pigam. Is we say, it's theoretical, if I were to buy this shivcha for my eved, what would be the cost difference of this woman, basula versus beula, and the deduction between the two? I'm making up numbers. Let's say it's 100 basula, 75 beula. So 25 is the added payment to the 50. 50 is knas. We measure pigam in reduction of cost between basula and beula. In my sampling, it was 25, and the other one we didn't really measure, but that would be boshes. Again, the Gemara doesn't really say how to measure that. I don't know how to measure the boshes, but that's what some of the payments are. That brings us to another Mishnah, a Mishnah that we actually got to see about 11 blot ago. 11 blot ago, and that is as follows: Kol makom sheyesh mecher yesh knas. Ein knas, excuse me. I'm already mixing up the shitas. I haven't even started the Mishnah yet. in any scenario where a girl is in theory allowed to be sold as a shivcha, ein knas. And it's going to be converse for him. V'chol makom sheyesh knas, ein mecher. But if there is a knas, then there's no mecher. And then the Mishnah continues detailing this shita. Ktana yesh la mecher ve'ein la knas. If she's a ktana, she can be sold, but she doesn't have a knas. Nara, if she's a little bit older, remember the ktana is young, up to 12. Nara from 12 until 12 and 6 months. Yesh la knas ve'ein la mecher. Habogeres ein la lo mecher ve'lo knas. Now all of this, says the Gemara, as we look at the next part of the Gemara, Amar of Yehuda Marab, Zo Divri Reb Meir. This Mishnah is really not complete. Oh, that's only the Shita of Reb Meir. That's not everybody. And says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down, Chachamim Omrim, the Yesh la Knas b'makom mecher. Reb Meir seemed to have had an inverse relationship between mecher and Knas for a Ketana and for a Nara. However, it was not the case for the Chachamim. Tanya, the Brisa writes, if you have a girl from mibas yom echad, from the day she's born until she's maybe shtei sairos, yesh la mecher ve'ein la knas. That we have the inverse relationship. We can expect this to be Reb Meir like our Mishnah. Mishatavi shtei sairos ad she's bager, from the time that she has 2 pubic hairs ad she's bager until the time that she becomes 12 years and 6 months, yesh la knas ve'ein la mecher. We see again the same inverse relationship, and that is, as we expected, Divrei Reb Meir reflecting our Mishnah perfectly. Our Mishnah showed that when it came to a Ketana and a Naira, that Reb Meir was of the opinion that the relationship between Mecher, her capacity to be sold, and Knas, her capacity to receive a Knas, they're always inverse. If one was yes, the other was no. Shahaya Reb Meir Omer, Kol Makom Sheyesh Mecher Ein Knas, Kol Makom Sheyesh Knas Ein Mecher. However, says the Gemara, the Chachamim Omrim Ktana mibas gimel shanu v'yom echad ve'ad she'is bager. The Chachamim said that the Ktana from 3 years and 1 day until Bagros yesh la knas. She does have a knas. So asks the Gemara, well, you're missing some information. We don't know what the Chachamim say about mecher. We know she has a knas. Says the Gemara, knas in mecher lo? No, ema af knas b'makom mecher. So there we see that the Chachamim break the rules of Rav Meir. They only argue under certain circumstances, because from age 0 to age 3 they agree. From age 3 to Nairos to age 12, let's say 11 years, 354 days, 353 days, then they would agree, that's where they argue. And the Chachamim say wherever there's mecher, there's knas, wherever there's knas, there's mecher. They don't have an inverse relationship. Amar Rav Chizda, my time of the Rav Meir. Why is it that Rav Meir is of the opinion that there is an inverse relationship? So says the Gemara, again, Amar Kra, below Sichya Isha. It should be to the woman. What does this mean? B'mahava atzma kasav medaber. It has to be of age where a woman is able to get married by herself on her own, and not as a ketana, at least to be able to accept kedushin. Rabbanan. What's the reason for the Rabbanan to argue? Amar Reish Lakish, Amar Kra Na'ara, Afilu Ketana b'mashma. Now this Na'ara, it's written with a hay in the Gemara, but it's referencing Na'ara in the Psukim, where it's read as Na'ara. But there's actually no hay in the pasuk in Chumash. Take a look at the psukim on the side if you have them, and that afilu ktana b'mashma. Now, this drasha of Reish Lakish, Shama Rav Papa b'reder Rav Chanan mibei Keluchis. Rav Papa, the son of Rav Chanan from the city of Keluchis, or from the base medrash of Keluchis, heard this. Azal Amra Kamed Rav Simi Barashi, and he went to Rav Simi Barashi to talk to him about this. Amar Le Atun Ahamas Nisula. This is where you learned it from. Anon, but we ahamas nisan law. We learned masninan law. We learned this on a different Mishnah. What was Reish Lakish talking about? Instead of his previous version, he was taught over here. Amar Reish Lakish hamotzi shemra la ketana pater. That if a man is motzi shemra on a ketana, then he doesn't have to pay the knas of the Torah of however many slime he has to pay. Shenemar v'nasnu la'avianara nara. Male, Dibir Akasu. The Torah was talking about a proper Nara, not a Ketana, a Nara who's between 3 and 12. Says the Gemara, Maski Floravada Barava. He asks a question 5 lines from the bottom to Kasav Rachmana. He says, Taima the Kasav Rachmana Nara. In regards to the Nara who we said that she is going to be Chayeves that she'll be able to get paid. That's because it says v'nasnu le'avia nara. Halav hachi hava min afilu ktana. I might have thought that even a ktana. How can you say that? V'haksiv b'memes haya davar hazeh lo nimtzu b'sulam lenara v'tziu es hanara al pesach beis avio skalua uktana lav bas onsheni. We have a diuk that's impossible. If we have a diuk that implies that if it says the word nara without a hey, that it includes a ktana. Ktana is not a bas skilahi. So this pasuk is talking about a case that if it became clear that this woman had no basulim, meaning that she actually did sleep with someone after she was engaged, and she gets skila. But a ktana is not a bas skila. So it can't be the nara without the hey means what we think it means. So it says the Gemara, Elakan nara, hakol makom shneimar nar, afilu ktana b'mashma. It really depends. You have to look at each pasuk and look at the context of each pasuk. And when it says nara in full, it can mean a nara proper. And when it says nara without, it could even mean a ktana b'mashma, could even mean a child. That's Shitas Reish Lakish. We're going to stop right here. Mirza Hashem will pick up tomorrow with Daf Mem Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Want to finish at the third tomorrow?
That was my question.